Hello, the learning target for this video is I can identify the domain and range. So first we'll address what is the domain and what is the range. The domain is the x values or the inputs of a function, and the range is the y values or the outputs of a function. Okay, so algebraically, you're going to think about what numbers you can plug in for x and the resulting numbers you will get for y. So if you had an equation or something, you would plug in whatever numbers you had for the x to get your results, your y values. That would be your domain and range. On a graph, you use the graph to visualize which x and y values are covered. Okay, so if we take a look at this graph here, it's a little bit interesting because these lines go all the way to the edge. Okay, what that really means, you may have seen arrows before, it means that that graph keeps on going forever and ever. So when we have a situation like that, we can't pick a specific value for our x because remember, this is our x-axis. It goes right to left. So this is going to keep going left, 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 more and more and more as it goes up, and same on this side. Okay, so for this situation, we would say that our domain is negative infinity to infinity. Sorry, my infinity symbols look a little bit ridiculous, but it's kind of like a sideways 8. Okay, and if there were actual values, you could draw lines to show it. Now I'm going to switch my color real quick to show the y or the range, right? This is our y-axis. How far up or down does this graph go? Okay, so we could draw a line right here, and we can't really draw a line on the top because remember that arrow or that graph going to the edge means that it keeps on going. So our range for this function, I zoomed in on that and that was a -5. So the next line would be -6 and then -7. All right, and there was a closed circle there, so we use this inclusive bracket. You can never include infinity, so you use just a regular parenthesis, but if the number is included, you use this square bracket. Okay, and it keeps going up forever, so we're going to use the infinity for our range. All right, and then when you have a table, that's a different situation. The graph is continuous because it's all connected, it's in a line. But when you're looking at a table, the values are all separate. So if you were listing the domain, this one would be list in a list. They use this fancy bracket here, and you would just list the numbers 7, 14, 21, 28. And then for the range, you would list the numbers. That's just your y values. So again, the domain is your x values listed out. Your range is your y values. 13, 27, 41, 55. Okay, so there's different ways of representing the domain and range. This is called interval notation, and then this is just a list of the numbers. Okay, so moving right along here, I'd like to go to the example. Okay, so why do we need to know about domain and range? Here's a real life example. So if you get a job at $13.20 per hour and can work up to 28 hours per week, how much money can you make? Okay, so in the table here, actually, let me start with the equation first. I wrote this equation, y equals 1320 times x, because you're going to multiply 1320 times the number of hours you work. X is representing the number of hours here. Okay, so if you take a look at the table, I went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I kind of skipped a little bit because I didn't want to take up so much room. So it shows you the different amounts of money that you make at all of these hours, all the way up to the highest of 28. Okay, and then I went and got this graph of the situation here, And, you know, I made it a little bit bigger because what if something I looked up said in New York State you could only do 28 hours if you're under 18. So what if when you get older you want to work 40 hours a week? You know, you can figure that out. But for this situation, I wanted to show how we can represent the domain by kind of making like a rectangle on this graph. Okay, so our x-axis is the left to right, and we start at 0 here. Oops, I'm having a hard time making a straight line, sorry. And remember, the maximum number of hours was 28. So 25, 26, 27, 28. I'm going to make a line right here. Ooh, ooh, this is tough on this thing. Sorry, guys. You could hopefully make a better straight line than I did. Um, and then for the range, we start at 0 hours, and we can see right here, if this is the maximum number of hours, if we continue this over, that's going to be the maximum amount of money that we can make at that time. So this rectangle represents our domain and range. Now, I know I talked about on the table, sometimes you might list it out, but for this situation, you can work like half an hour, or, you know, maybe you you got up there a little bit late, so you missed 15 minutes, or you had to stay a little late one day. So when you punch in and punch out, if they, I don't even know if they still do that. When I had my first job, they did. Um, but you know, you can work decimals and fractions, fractional parts of hours. So this is a continuous situation, and we want to include all of those numbers in between. Okay, so for our domain, oops, this keeps moving. I'm just going to go to a new thing. We will start at 0, and including 0, because it is possible to work 0 hours some week. And then the maximum number is 28. Okay, and we could work 28, so we're going to use the inclusive bracket there. And then the range, the amount of money we make, starts at 0, and it goes all the way up to 369.60. And we're going to include it there.